Hello, I'm Helen Whedon, the Managing Director of the Satcoms Innovation Group, and I'm here with one of our members, Richard Jacklin of Vialite Communications. Hello, Richard.
Hi, Helen. Nice to meet you.
You too. So Vialite is a designer and manufacturer of RF over fiber links and systems. It's got a diverse customer base from SMEs to blue chip organizations. So Richard, obviously 2020 has been an extremely challenging year for across the globe. So how did you adapt your Satcom equipment and supply business when COVID struck?
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Helen. As you said correctly in your introduction, I mean, we supply a broad range of customers from Satcom through to broadcast, through to defense and GPS and timing, and also all of those sort of fared in different ways when sort of COVID struck. But for us as an organization, and probably like most organizations and companies around the world, preparing for a kind of a global pandemic is not normally at the top of a company's resilience or emergency planning deck. So it was obviously, shock to us like everybody else, but we had to act quickly. We had to take the government's advice and listen to what they were saying. As a business that's got sort of R&D, manufacturing and admin and commercial people, when we sort of went into the sort of immediate lockdown with the COVID-19, we obviously moved all the sort of admin and commercial staff off-site to home offices as fast as we possibly could. So in effect, for us, I mean, we created like 40 new offices overnight because everyone sort of went back home. But of course, from the manufacturing perspective, we've got a manufacturing site here in the UK, and you can't do that from home. Those people have got to be on site. They've got to access the equipment and facilities there. So we continued with manufacturing throughout the lockdown period, and as we do today. But the challenge there was obviously, bringing in those sort of health and safety requirements, making us COVID secure, putting in the cleaning practices, the social distancing, and everything that we did. For Satcom R&D engineering, that was kind of mixed, I suppose, because some of the engineers they could work at home for a period. For some of the systems, we can do remote hookup to test benches, so they can still access equipment, but do that from their home. But there were times when they had to come into the office and actually touch and feel real equipment and do development on the lab benches. We didn't want to put our 40 gigahertz analyzers into the back of cars and rattle them to home offices and garages and sheds, because it's just not really good when you've got hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of equipment. So we had to keep the business running. If you're a supplier into Satcom, and particularly if you're a supplier into Satcom and defense-related organisations like the MOD, you become a designated essential business anyway. So Vialite and its parent company, Pulse Power Measurement, we were designated an essential business. So we just kept going throughout the whole lockdown period and kept supplying. And in fact, we've managed to keep to our deliveries, meet our commitments to customers worldwide. So that's been the main thing. Yeah,
absolutely, and I'm sure that's been extremely helpful for your customers, who would have been no doubt impacted themselves by everything that's been happening.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, what does the business landscape look like now for your customers in both Satcom and broadcast?
Yeah, so Satcom's probably our largest business market vertical segment that we deal with. When the lockdown occurred, not just in the UK, but obviously worldwide, because that's where most of our customers are, a lot of the teleport operators, they kind of really scaled back to, I'd say, essential operations only. So they only had those sort of engineers and technical staff allowed on site just to keep those dishes working. Other people weren't really allowed on their sites. So, our business kind of went from normal business of obsolescence and new systems and a new technology rollout, it sort of retracted a bit just to the obsolescence management and making sure they could keep those teleports running. And of course, you know, those teleports were really important. You know, the world's become dependent on communications, and it's been essential that those systems have not failed. But in the background to that, though, you know, we've been kept very, very busy still doing the future planning expansion. We've been very busy with the sort of the KA band, long distance link designs. We even got one of our KA band long distances actually installed through the lockdown period, which was an interesting challenge. I'll come back to that a minute when we talk about remote working. But so that's been interesting. On the other part of the Satcom, other areas that we've seen actually grow in the period have been around the C-band links. So there's been lots of news, you've probably seen it around SES and others that are now starting to repurpose the spectrum in C-band for 5G communication services, and that's adjusted what they're using on the satellites. So we've had quite a lot of business looking at replacing those C-band systems on the ground. So on the broadcast side, I think no shock to anyone. I mean, that's been hit really, really hard because you know, when the Olympics got postponed and football and all the other big sporting events got pulled back and postponed, that's had a big knock-on effect on the TV and broadcast industry. But in the last 2 months or so, you know, that picture's changing. We're starting to see some green shoots in that area. We've got some good orders in July coming back for the broadcast side. As those events are starting to get turned on, and we continue with that through into 2021. Other areas, interestingly, we've seen the business accelerate. 2 areas. The data center stuff that we do around GPS and GPS routing, that's been very, very healthy over the entire lockdown period. And again, kind of sort of supports the whole shift from people working in offices to people working in their homes. Having that virtual infrastructure available and working, and the communications working, has been really important. So that investment has not pared back. In fact, I'd say that's accelerated. And we've had a couple of interesting cases actually in the hospital sector as well, where we've got radio equipment going into hospitals. We've had to accelerate the deployment of that as they've needed to bring hospital infrastructure up to date very quickly. So it's been a mixed picture, I'd say. Some very difficult areas, some very bright areas, and I'd say at the moment still a fair amount of pent-up demand. So when we do get to the other side of this, I think the prospects are still very, very positive for us.
Very good. I mean, I imagine from all of that, then there's a number of lessons learned. So what are the lessons learned, and how will you change for the future based on those lessons?
Yeah. Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think the pandemic's really sort of put a spotlight on communications, remote support, and remote working. And we've all had to adapt to this, and not just in a business setting, but also, I guess, with friends and family as well. That whole thing has changed. Vialite as a company, we've always, like most companies, strived to support customers wherever they are, wherever they're in the world, and we've got customers everywhere: Middle East, North America, Europe, in Asia. Traditionally, we've obviously tried to do that in person, face to face. But we do try and support that as well with a number of remote working tools. So even in sort of the pre-sales area, last year we launched a brand new cloud-based design tool, which we call Vialite System Designer, and that's been aimed at helping ground station and teleport operators design new solutions, and particularly for the long-distance links. So that's been really, really helpful over this lockdown period, and we'll continue to develop that kind of cloud-based tool. Then through sort of more closer to deployment, we've been doing more deployment guides, more deployment videos. As I say, the long-distance link that we had deployed Normally we would have been there, but we couldn't in this situation because it was in a country that we couldn't fly to. So we did a whole series of videos to help the installation engineers on the ground actually deploy what would normally be quite complex equipment. And they did that very successfully, and the results have been very, very good. The post-sale side, of course, like everyone's using Zoom or Skype or Microsoft Teams, we use that extensively now. And we also have other tools that link our engineers into customer systems. We have system reports and event loggers that we can download. We can monitor, we could diagnose issues if there are any. So, those whole range of tools from pre-sale to deployment through to post-sale, we're employing now. And I'll tell you, been fairly successful. We haven't really had a problem through the whole kind of lockdown period where we haven't been able to solve it one way or another through remote working tools. And even during the lockdown, we've sort of continued that. We're now putting our M&C control remote tools right into our smallest enclosures. So even the small boxes, we now have little SNMP units that we can put in there to help customers. So I think, just summing up, it's been difficult time, hasn't it? For everyone in business, and difficult times, particularly at the home. But I think us in the Satcom world, those satellite launches have kept going. Of course, we've seen the manned mission as well with Starlink. So there's still great activity, great buoyancy in the Satcom market, and I think the future for ground segment suppliers like Vialite is still good. We're still here, we're still delivering. We'll keep going.
That's very nice to hear, and it's really great to see the way that companies such as yours are adapting and have adapted so quickly to what was a totally unprecedented situation.
Thank you.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Great, thank you so much for your time, Richard. If anybody wants to find out more about Vialite, they can go to the website www.vialite.com.
That's correct.
Thanks a lot.